time zone, sweet world. It is Tuesday, June 17th, 2025, and welcome into the Anch Show, a broadcast about the video games business. Hello, what's up? My name is Anch. During the day, I am a business analyst. I've worked in financial, economic, and public policy contexts, but during the evenings and at night, I'm a video gamist. I enjoy playing, talking, and writing about video games. And it's in that spirit that I'm back to do something of a, podcast talk show around video games, around the business of video games. But there's just so much ground to cover, and I've been out of it for about 6 months, and honestly, don't even know if there's even an audience for any of this. But you know what? I figure, as if listening to Pirate Software themselves, maybe give it 3 months and see where it goes, and see what I've learned, and see if there's anybody out here to engage with on these topics. And if not, then maybe it's time to move on, or maybe you learn from it and you try something else. But yeah, I'm suspending disbelief for the moment, and just going out there and having fun with it, and doing what what I perceive to be a little bit of a gap in some of this space in terms of coverage. It all comes back to, when I think about different components of the industry, I come back to it as a desire to connect the dots between game players, business people, and game developers, and analyzing trends and sharing insights by streaming our games and streaming our game discussions. And if we can do that with our communities, then we can pay it all forward. And that's why I'm proud to be a member of Epilogue Gaming. Epilogue Gaming views video games as art, literature, and a storytelling medium. They are a community-driven platform that values inclusivity and creativity among gamers. You can check them out over at epiloguegaming.com. On Twitch, they're a place to go see the game. Afterwards, they're a place to go when you're finished. The Bazaar is a place where we wanted to create a safe space for video game enjoyers of all backgrounds to connect, play, and learn games, while encouraging and supporting community members to grow. Today, we'll talk about a little bit about IO Interactive and their journey to independence. This is from Jason Schreier at Bloomberg, a piece that he had written. I talked a little bit about before this, about maybe over a year ago, I had talked about IO Interactive. I think that was around the time when, the latest Hitman, the World of Assassination had just come out. And that was the third iteration of the Hitman thing, but they would, their kind of long tail on Hitman, and that strategy. And so, here we are again with Hitman doing something new with Le Chiffre, I think it is, and kind of tying that together in some sense with the James Bond game that will come, So there's something interesting there to take a look at in terms of their journey, but also, maybe not all positive with some of the stuff that's been going on with Mind's Eye. So stuff to dig into there. There was, like I say, it's a bit of a catch-up stream for me. So there was another article that I had missed out on, talking about Control 2, Remedy's kind of cost estimates, and some of the discussion around this, and a little bit of additional analysis that I had done digging into it that I wanted to talk about a little bit. We talked about the Nintendo Switch 2 last time. We have more figures, obviously, that have come out since then, so I think a little bit interesting to dive into that. But also, should talk about license changes, and I'm sure this is probably old news by now. If you know anything about anything by now, you probably know about the different license changes. If not, I don't know, go listen to Torrent on Twitch, Torrents on YouTube. Shout outs to Torrent. And outside of that, Hoyoverse went after a leaker. There's a little bit of interesting something to dig into there. Also, PlayStation financial results and SAG-AFTRA has reached a tentative agreement with video game companies. But I think this is a pretty standard format for this kind of thing. Is usually before I get into the news, I want to talk a little bit about games I've been playing, things I've been doing, and Tunic has been the main thing. Not a whole lot to discuss at this point, outside of to say, really having a great time with it. I think the music is fantastic. I think it is so varied and well composed, with great tempo and pacing and variety, that when you put it together with the art style and you put it together with the different things that are going on with the lighting and the shading, and just also just different audio design around the sound effects, and whether there are environmental sounds or whether in other sections where there aren't. When you put all that kind of stuff together, you create an experience that is really kind of immersive and really engaging, and really can make you feel like you're, at one point in time your heart is absolutely pounding, and then in the next everything has calmed down, so you're really along for a ride there. And I thought that's, that has been a really cool kind of thing to experience going through it. The atmosphere is fantastic in that game. I think the other thing about it is, the exploration in that game. There's a intentional kind of lack of hand-holding in it. And that leads to some real intentional, true exploration that you have to do. And that experience is a really fun one. I think in so many, let's say, modern games these days, you can be really kind of handheld through things, or you could really be in a habit of saying like, oh, I'm just going to look this up. And, you basically use the wiki to walk you through situations, which, I don't know, I go both ways on it. Sometimes I have done that. Sometimes I will do that, especially if, these are like 60-hour games or something that I just do not have time to be sitting there trying to figure out everything, and I want to see the thing, then yeah, but I think that's not really the case with this game, because I think if you were to just play this game through normally, you're looking at probably 16 hours, 15 hours. And so there's no need to really do that unless you're like really and truly stumped, because, I think at the same time, this is a game that, because of the way that it's intentionally leaving out English or any language to pick up on. There's a bit of English here and there, but it's really sprinkled around some foreign language that is intentionally not readable. If you were to drop this game and then come back to it a really long time later, you would be prone to forget. You'd probably forget everything. And then, it would be really difficult to figure out what you're supposed to do and where you're supposed to go. You would almost be better off just starting the game all over again. So that's it. I think, later on today, I can probably get back into some Tunic, which should be good. But yeah, why don't we get straight into the news, because there's quite a bit. Normally I don't like to pick out so many articles, but I don't know. Like I say, it's a catch-up stream for me. I think in the future I will try to more tightly scope it, maybe limit it to 3 things, and, aim for something like maybe a 15-minute time. I think that would probably be the best thing to do. But hey, anyway, let us get into news. So this first thing up is like I say, an article from Jason Schreier here at Bloomberg. It talks about IO Interactive's journey to independence. Hitman developer IO Interactive emerges as How Hitman Developer became one of the largest independent game companies. 8 years ago, IO Interactive was bleeding money. Now it's one of the biggest privately owned video game companies in the world. He talks about how it became independent after Square Enix, was trying to withdraw from it in 2017. Hakan Abrak had laid off half the studio, if not more. That studio got reduced to about 100 people, and then they made a proposal to buy the studio themselves with some management group, I'm sure. And that's when they had started their live service approach for Hitman, continuously updating it with new missions and maps instead of starting from scratch with a new expensive AAA project each time, because games can cost so much. They can cost tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars to make. They also secured funding through contracts with companies like Google or Epic to release titles on those platforms. And that helped them to pay staff and maintain independence without having to take on any significant outside investment, right? I think when they're talking about staying away from outside investment, they probably mean significant equity financing arrangements that would, be with other publishers most likely, and would give those publishers a great deal of influence in how the developer can operate. So surely, like, when they say they don't have any outside investment, like, surely they have a bank loan. They definitely have debt financing. Who doesn't have a bank loan or a line of credit in a business? So, but it's been really impressive to see how much they've been able to stretch their development dollars as far as they go, and not throw away anything and keep iterating over such a long time frame. But I think, again, the other thing though to see here is, and there's this quote here, says Abrak, "I think we have this hunger and this accountability and this sharpness. I think we found a way to make very ambitious AA games quite efficiently." And that's, mostly true. Fine. But that dovetails into a quick commentary on Mind's Eye, which, to be clear, I haven't interacted with Mind's Eye. I have not bought the game. I will not buy the game, and my intent is certainly not to slam dunk on a project that has gone wrong. But IO took a publishing role with this game, and it has not been well received, and has resulted in Sony issuing refunds, Steam issuing refunds, and I heard about stories about how this game was pulled from Steam storefronts and then put back up, and then for two different prices. One was like a regular price and one was a premium price, but they were both pointing towards the same product, the same version of game. And the kind of response from Mind's Eye in all of this is like, we're a premium spec game, and so we understand that people are going to have trouble, which is kind of a response that you would have seen back in the Cyberpunk 2077 whole deal when all of that happened. So that's not a great look for IO there. I think you have to be a little bit careful about, just because you've gotten to a place where now you've been successful for a really long time, and now you have really great internal resources because of everything that you've been doing. And so now you're looking in different directions in which you might be able to expand and scale up different operations. You got to be a little bit careful about whether that you decide to go in a direction in which you have limited experience in, I guess, which is publishing other people's games, rather than, developing and self-publishing things, or developing and publishing through other, well-established publishers. So there's that article that I found interesting on Bloomberg there. Next article is from Steven Totillo, and this is having to do with Remedy. This was May 7th. Remedy's next big game is being made for less money, but can still be great, CEO says. The head of the studio behind Alan Wake and Control talks to GameFile about Remedy's survival, a key cancellation, and getting game devs to think more about business, but not too much. This is a really cool article. So this is Remedy Entertainment. They're known for single-player thrillers like Alan Wake and Control. They are developing their next major single-player game, Control 2. The budget is, quoted at 50 million euros, split with Annapurna. It is a bit higher than their previous hit, Alan Wake 2. The budget is. CEO Tero Vitala believes 50 million euros is sufficient to create excellent games, aiming for a break-even point at 2 million units sold. This is his kind of interview here, his commentary here is on their so-called Smart Creativity Initiative. So they've implemented a strategy called Smart Creativity to motivate game developers to think more about the business aspects and costs of game creation. This involves educating game makers about the financial requirements for features and scope, showing them company and project financials, and helping them understand why budgets are set at certain levels. Vertella noted that in tough industry times, people appreciate that financial success is necessary for them to have jobs. So this is really fascinating. I find that this smart creativity strategy kind of enduring for me. Obviously, I would, right? I'd be biased towards it as a financial analyst myself. And I got stuck doing some math for this. Because, there are a couple of other articles out here that have come out already that have talked about, a target of 100% return on investment, about, maybe a 3 to 4 year timeline on achieving that 100% ROI. And also in this GameFile article, they talked about a development budget of 50 million euros and a break-even point of 2 million games sold, right? So in management accounting, in cost accounting, when you look at fixed costs and variable costs, but you look at fixed costs, if you're to spread those fixed costs over a contribution margin per unit, which is the price of a unit minus the variable costs of the unit, that would tell you the number of break-even units to be sold, right? Here we're given something else. We're given 50 million of a budget, which we then have to make an assumption on to say, well, okay, let's say that's the total development cost. Let's say that's the cost of investment for the project. If you spread that 50 million, if you just say, okay, well, that's the total cost, that's total fixed and variable costs, that's everything for the entire project, and you spread that over 2 million units as a break-even point, then you come down to a number of some sort of like average revenue that would need to be gathered to cover the total costs of investing in the project. And that would be 25 euros per game. So then if you take 70 euros as a game price, maybe it's even 80 euros now, but let's just assume there's a 70 euro price point, like we're in 2020 or 2019 or something like that. And you take away that 25 euros that you need to be able to cover the investment cost, then that 45 euros remaining is what can cover any other cost of production and sale. And after you cover all of that, then that's kept as profit for internal for returning into the internal kind of envelope to be used on other projects or going to investors through dividends, for example. And so, so you take all that stuff together. There's some other facts that come out of this article talking about, they'd be really happy if they were to sell 4 million copies. And if they were to sell, I think, even 5 million copies. And I think there was even an article on Call of Duty development cost. Yeah, right. So like we've seen other articles out there talking about Call of Duty development costs that were between 450 million to 700 million dollars per game, right? For these kind of big projects. So if we come back to the Remedy case, then, okay, so let's say that you're in the perfect scenario and you've, over the lifetime of the game, you've been able to sell 5 million copies. And let's say that you did that at 70 euros each, right? So 5 billion times 70 euros means 350 million euros of revenue. Take away the dev cost of 50 million euros from that, and that leaves you with 300 million euros now. And then we go to the definition of return on investment. Well, what is return on investment? They're saying 100%, but return on investment means you take net profit and you divide it by the cost of investment. We're saying that the cost of investment is 50 million euros. That's the investment cost for developing this game. Well, for the ROI to be 100%, then the net profit has to be 50 million in this forecasting, or this scenario that we're trying to project. And so, if we come back to like our theoretical income statement here and we think about it like that, okay, so revenue minus development costs leaves me with 300 million euros. And then I know that I have to have a net profit of 50 million euros. So 300 million minus 50 million equals 250 million euros. And that would represent all other costs. It's a plug. We calculate that using all the other numbers that we've figured out, which themselves use assumptions, right? And that's how you can come to some sort of estimate of what the total cost would be. So through all the information that has been given out here, I would estimate the costs to be, all costs to be 250 million euros, cost of production and sale. The cost of investment would be 50 million, right? So then 250 plus 50 would mean 300 million. And, so, I mean, of course it's an estimate, so who knows, but it kind of jives because, again, we've seen this other information out here with Call of Duty type of investment levels that are, like millions of US dollars, higher than what I'm thinking of here. And even if you take just the net profit of 50 million and you were to divide it by 350 million, that would be a net profit margin of about 14%, which is totally reasonable, in fact, it would be really good. I mean, it depends on what industry averages are. You can't look at these kind of profitability ratios in a silo because they're kind of meaningless unless you compare them against something. And so, that can be year over year. You can compare it to yourself in terms of how you've performed throughout the years, but you can also compare it to your key industry competitors or overall industry competitors. So without that information, in a silo, I won't be able to tell you, but, all that to say, I tend to think about it like this. I say, okay, if I went to a bank and I wanted to go get a loan or not even that, if I went to a bank and I wanted to invest in something and they told me that they were going to give me 7% back, I'd say, great, that's cool. That sounds great. That sounds really high. And, they told me, oh, well, we have this savings account and that's going to give you 2%. I'd be like, oh, well, that's shit, that's low. And then, I thought about investing in a video game, let's say, and they told me that, I would get a 14% return. I'd be like, okay, well, yeah, hell yeah. I won't get a 14% return though. Like they'll get a 14% operating margin, and then I'll get some money back through a dividend, right? So my actual return would be calculated a bit differently. But anyway, that's I don't know. That's how I think through the whole kind of thing. So yeah. Anyway, it's a neat little thought experiment. I think it certainly caught my attention because of the potential for financial analysis. But I think, it's this smart creativity idea is it is directly addressing how they can attempt to manage variable and fixed costs associated with development, and encouraging, staff who are responsible for budgets to make more calculated choices about, how to manage that budget with the features that they can choose to use, which ultimately impacts labor costs through, how much you can afford, and then also through, just impacts the overall effectiveness of investments in your projects. So I found that really interesting. Moving on here. We're moving on to the Nintendo Switch 2 again. Last week, we had talked a little bit about, some sales figure projections, particularly unit sales, unit sale targets for Nintendo Switch 2. They want to meet 15 million units in the first year. It had launched on June 5th. They have already sold 3.5 billion units globally over their first 4 days of sales. This makes it the fastest selling Nintendo system ever, likely the biggest console launch in history. In the US specifically, it sold between 1.1 million and 1.35 billion units in the first week. That set a new all-time record for first week hardware sales. It has surpassed the PS4. Interesting number here as well. 79% of US Switch 2 buyers also purchased Mario Kart World, either through a bundle or separately, which, Mario Kart World was like the thing that it came out with, right? And very little, there was other stuff, but there were games that already existed that were, now made for a better piece of hardware, the next iteration of hardware in the line of Switch. So this makes sense. It's not surprising, but good for Mario Kart. Absolutely good for Mario Kart. And they're still projecting 15 million. That's fine. 3.5 million out of 15 is about 23%. So they're already over a fifth of the way there to meeting their target. And so that really confirms that, there was a ton of pent up demand, which is something that we had explored last week in terms of, why there would be pent up demand and expectations around that. And yeah, Switch really long in the tooth. So an upgrade was welcome by many people. That's the Switch 2. But you actually, there's a little bit more here. It's not awesome, which is something that I had seen before. Again, I'll name drop Torrent. My buddy Torrent is a YouTuber who is creating more and more content over there on their channel. I think their channel is Torrent Tech. Torrents Tech. Let me get this. I think it's youtube.com/@torrent329 gets you there. It's a great channel. Torrent does a really great job. Doing a lot of short videos, also some long format videos. Really knowledgeable about technology. And so, yeah, anyway, I had seen one of Torrent's videos on some of the changes that were here. And also I've read about this, this is again from GameFile, one of the main publications that I subscribe to and read. One of the major things that happened in the license agreement that you have to sign for this thing is console modification, piracy, and online services, right? So if you mess with this thing, Nintendo's can brick your Nintendo Switch. They can render it completely useless. And so the updated agreement says that if users bypass, modify, decrypt, defeat, tamper with, or otherwise circumvent any of the functions or protections of the Nintendo account services, Nintendo may render the device permanently unusable. A significant change specifies that a child agreeing to the Nintendo terms automatically means that their parent or legal guardian also agrees and is responsible for their use, including any issues or claims. This is designed to close a loophole related to minors being bound by arbitration clauses, as seen in past Joy-Con drift lawsuits. So, I think if you tamper with this thing and you try to hack it, and it gets bricked, that's on you. You probably shouldn't have done that. I don't know. You're free to do whatever you want, obviously. I don't care. It's cool. Hey, you hacked a piece of machinery, and that can be fun. As long as it doesn't harm anyone else, and whatever. Nintendo doesn't like it, and so that's why they've tried to protect themselves through this kind of agreement. I understand that. I can understand that. I think I can accept that. That's fine. I have a harder time swallowing this kind of forcing an agreement to say that, if a child does something, therefore the parent agrees to it and, is therefore responsible for any harm that can happen. Hey, Paula, how's it going? I have a problem with that. I think that's conceptually immoral. Like that is not a good thing, It really puts the onus on a parent for such an expensive piece of machinery, And with how many people that are out there, you just get away from just, we're in video games and we're knowledgeable about all this stuff. And so you probably already heard about the license stuff and are aware of it. There are going to be so many people out there that they're just parents and, their kids want something and they're going to go buy them something, and their kid might be mischievous and they might get up to well, how many things did you do as a kid that were, that your parents didn't know about and that, were sus, and so I could see situations where, these consoles get bricked, parents find out later and then now have to deal with this whole kind of situation. And I think that's really unfair. It puts and again, especially for machinery that is now so expensive, has gone up in price, and even for me in a country like where I'm at in Canada, the full extent of foreign exchange loss is transferred to us. We pay it, and so that's a lot of money to just lose out on, if the thing goes. And then you face, the uphill battle of trying to then go back to Nintendo and try to beg and plead, with all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And this kind of, I come back to this, there's a common kind of thing in a concept in accounting called form versus substance. And, I think it's unfortunate. I think the courts would probably respect the contract, but I think, in substance, I think this is unfair. This is really an unfair arrangement to put on people to sign these things. And we sign these things, things like this all the time because we don't have power in that arrangement. We really want the games and we really want the games console. And it's like they can write as much as they want in these things. Anyway, not great. Let's move on from that. We'll go on to the Hoyoverse. So here's another article. This is more recent. This is by Nicole Carpenter, has written about this. This is on GameFall. So Hoyoverse, they're known for aggressive legal tactics. They have subpoenaed Twitter in the past to find identities of people that had posted Genshin Impact leaks. They subpoenaed Discord to try and identify different accounts. And they went after GitHub for the same reason, to identify people who were perpetrating leaks. They have now filed a lawsuit for the maximum penalty of $150,000 against a Mr. Lopez for broadcasting an unreleased Honkai Star Rail content, unreleased Honkai Star Rail content in a Discord channel. That Discord server had 12,000 members, but it's not, they didn't stream it to 12,000 people. It's just a private call, basically, that somehow Hoyoverse found out about. They're trying to do this lawsuit through a copyright claim. They are asserting that the game leaks dampens the excitement and anticipation that many players feel when they obtain the update legitimately upon its official release, and that it disrupts marketing campaigns. The legal strategy is focusing on copyright claims relating to whatever the users do with the leaks, as opposed to how they obtain the information. Nintendo has also pursued a similar tactic. There's a person named Mr. Keegan who had streamed 10 or so unreleased Nintendo Switch games. Actually, you know what? There is a whole bunch to dive into here. For me, though, the main issue that I have with this is just the framing of it. The framing that they're taking to the court, I think, is a disingenuous one. I think it's, again, another immoral kind of thing, right? Because they're framing this as an experience issue in court, and saying that because this the defendant is purported to have damaged the experience of other users, and therefore they should pay damages. I don't think that's the actual substance. I think, first of all, that person hasn't done any harm, I don't think, because they would have taken this to some Discord call and they showed it to about 10 people who were interested in the Discord call, whatever it was, right? There's some screenshot out there. You can see some users in a Discord call. There's going to be limits to how many people are going to be in that call. Come on. You have to be a little bit sensible about this. So when you look at form versus substance, you look at the substance of it. Well, what is it? It's the core issue would be lost sales, right? That's why it would be bad enough for you to go and try to sue. The first thing would be lost sales, but the second thing would be you would be concerned about this kind of thing spiraling out of control as more and more leaks happen, right? And so you want to go and you want to do something really punitive. That's your strategy, to go out there and punish somebody really badly, or at least attempt to scare other people out of doing something. And in that way, controlling behavior around this kind of area. And, so it's lost revenue because of a loss of excitement. It's lost excitement because of leaks, but it's leaks because of poor internal control. And, again, in this case with Mr. Lopez, it's a completely different case from the person who was out there streaming Nintendo games, unreleased Nintendo Switch games. So my interpretation of the suit really is, Hoyo looked at it as like, do we sue a person, or do we try to fix our internal controls around, how do we either prevent these versions of games going out to be put on private servers, or somehow provision that as something that can happen, or do we sue, right? Like those are the two things, and they went with sue because it's the easier thing to do rather than fix anything that's going on at your organization. Right? I think that's lazy. And so, dead set, like just super terrible kind of situation. and kind of gross is basically where I land up on this. So that's it for the Hoyoverse. I think the sixth thing on the list here is PlayStation financial results. So out of their reporting has come out, and one of the things that came out of all this is that their headcount has declined. Their first headcount decline since 2020, dropping from 12,700 employees to 12,100 employees as of March 31st, 2025. It's the first decline in the division's official headcount since 2020, when Sony began publicizing the size of its video game workforce. The most recent figures were quietly updated on Sony's investor site on June 3rd, but had not been previously reported. It had occurred amidst multiple visible layoffs totaling 1,500 jobs since 2023. However, the overall drop is smaller than the layoff figures suggest, likely due to some cut workers finding new roles within Sony and continuing hiring in the gaming division. Only mass layoffs make news and are sometimes used to show investors that costs are being contained, while hiring seldom hits headlines and is typically handled more quietly. Despite the headcount reduction, Sony stated that PS5 generation has been its most profitable to date, achieving record highs in sales and operating incomes. And there's some, either some slides here or some graphics that were produced pointing towards PS5. It is, PS5 sales. Okay. So PS5 sales looks like 136 billion from 2020 to 2024. And operating income attributed to the PS5 between those same years of 13 billion. And that's greater than the PS4. The PS4 comparables are 107 billion of sales over the lifetime and 9 billion of operating income. The PS3, 71 billion of sales and a loss of 4 billion. PS2, 44 billion of sales, 2 billion operating income. PS1, 24 billion and operating income, 3 billion. During the investor call, Sony investors also asked about the PS6. They asked about cloud gaming, which CEO, Sony Interactive Entertainment CEO Hideaki Nishino, Mr. Hideaki Nishino, said that streaming is valuable, but the future of the platform is top of mind. We're committed to exploring new and enhanced ways for players to engage with our content and our services. But most players want to play on local hardware. When they were asked about Microsoft's decisions to move away from the console, Nishino said competition and exploration of new models by industry players is healthy. He reaffirmed Sony's current console and PC-centric direction, saying that there isn't an urgent need for us to pivot. When asked about the potential of artificial intelligence to impact Sony's game business, PlayStation's head of game studios, Herman Holst, said, "I don't actually expect in the near future a dramatic reduction of the cost of game development. I think that would be unfair to claim that, but I do see tremendous potential for benefits in AI as a suite of tools to further enable our developers. AI might help improve the quality of game characters and backgrounds, help real-time translation, and enable more personalization in live service games," he said. So I think, hear the commentary on investment in AI. I think they're looking at it as a labor augmentation, from a labor augmentation standpoint first. I think that if and only if it works as a labor augmentation, device, then do you start looking at labor reduction, which would be, I think, something that would follow after that. And I think either way there would be significant costs, and you would have to assess the two together. You would have to see what kind of fixed and variable cost do you have from employing labor. If you wanted to make a switch or if you wanted to invest in some artificial intelligence technologies or something like this, then you'd have to look at what are the fixed and variable costs associated with that. And what are any new costs that come because of this? And are there any costs that are saved from anything that we have to or plan to drop, whether that includes labor or not, with ongoing operations, right? Those things have to be really weighed together to be able to tell, what you're meant to do, what's the best thing to do. But this is interesting to see. As we'll talk about a little later, though, really kind of, it's, if you can benefit from it, it's good for you, right? But at the same time, if you're in direct competition with the technology, or if it's a toss-up whether you will be able to benefit from it, because there's a chance that after the check on labor augmentation passes and some sort of new production level is reached, and now maybe we don't need so many people, then it can become a bit of a coin flip as to whether you still have a job, right? And so then you're a little bit more concerned about it, and of course you are, and then need to figure out what can you do, and we'll talk a little bit about that later when we talk about the whole SAG-AFTRA thing. But before we get there, while we're still on the topic of AI, it also makes me think of some of the stuff that we've seen in the Take-Two and EA reporting packages, right? I think the industry as a whole, and these two companies in particular, are cognizant that their audiences, their players, generally speaking, do not want generative AI or AI prominently in their games, or in their products, or even in their processes, if that becomes public knowledge. And so from Take-Two's last annual report, which was recently filed, this is from Bloomberg, May 23rd article, Jason Schreier again. The development and use of artificial intelligence, AI, into our products may present operational and reputational risks. The growth of AI technologies in our industry has influenced game production for developers and gaming experience for players. The use of this new and emerging technology, which is in its early stages of wider spread commercial use, presents social and ethical issues that may result in legal and reputational harm and liability. Further, any integration of AI technologies into our products or services may result in new or enhanced governmental or regulatory scrutiny, litigation, confidentiality or security risks, ethical concerns, negative user perceptions as to automation and AI, or other complications that could adversely affect our business, reputation, or financial results. Another example comes from EA. EA acknowledged in their reporting packages that implementing AI into its game-making processes could backfire. We are integrating artificial intelligence tools and technologies into our business and development processes. The use of artificial intelligence might present social and ethical issues that, if not managed appropriately, may result in legal and reputational harm, cause consumers to lose confidence in our business and brands, and negatively impact our financial and operating results. So the core issue en masse is that players do not like generative AI. If they do, they're quiet about it because they're probably in a situation where they can benefit from it. And as every video game, major video game firm out there rushes to try and get a robust plan going on how they're going to implement AI in their business, or new AI technologies in their business, they have to consider the backlash that could come, because they're selling to populations that are either creatives or that cannot benefit, or who are already in direct competition with the technologies for a meaningful job in their industry. And so, when then you end up in a situation where public opinion can turn against your game. And when that happens, it can go a long way to tanking your launch and thereby negatively impacting your overall lifetime performance, which is so important because these games can be so expensive that you need a really long tail on them to be able to recoup your cost fully, and then, keep going to get that ROI target that you might have had. So it's that was really interesting to kind of dig into there. So we'll move on finally to SAG-AFTRA. So this is the Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, or SAG-AFTRA, has reached a tentative agreement with video game companies after a nearly year-long strike. And so, in some games over this period, we've seen some stuff around, like some games not having voiced lines, and some weird stuff around this, like unfinished work that there's just nothing they could really do about it. So looking into this deal, the 3-year deal includes historic wage increases of over 24%, enhanced health and safety protections, and industry-leading AI provisions. Crucially, the AI provisions require transparency, consent, and compensation for the use of digital replicas of actors' voices and performances. A notable sci-fi element of the agreement ensures that if an actor goes on strike, any digital replica they previously permitted game companies to use also goes on strike and cannot be deployed. Union members have until July 9th, 2025 to ratify the agreement. And so, the thing here is this is a significant development, demonstrating how labor groups are addressing the implications of AI and ensuring protection and compensation for their members. We had talked about last week about it might have been 2 weeks ago, about the whole ZeniMax situation, about how about 300 of their employees had unionized, but that was after like 2 years of negotiation, if not more. I might have presented it a bit simplistically, actually, when I think back on it, but whatever, it's fine. 2 years of negotiation that took. This has been a year of striking before coming at this agreement. But this is part of a growing trend that we're seeing in unionization and worker advocacy in technology and entertainment industries. And I'm curious to see if more workers in video games will make attempts to unionize as a mechanism to combat against the negative effects of AI technologies on their livelihoods, and just generally the negative effects of not receiving wage compensation increases that we should be receiving. I always come back to, if you were to look at I look in Canada, but I think you can do this in the US too, most likely. For all I know, actually, the graph that I'm thinking about probably was using US data, but anyway. Either way, if you were to plot the S&P 500 returns over time, and you were also to plot wage growth returns over time, you would notice that the wage growth is like this, and the very flat as compared to the S&P 500, which kind of just keeps going up, at a much higher slope. And anyway, all that is to say is that the S&P 500 or stock returns, equity returns, are traditionally much higher than returns on wages, or the wage level that you receive as compensation. And so that's why you have your 401k, or you have your RRSP, and you invest in stocks and all this kind of stuff, right? And then as you get older, you might move into mutual funds and blah, 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 so on. But hey, if you're not receiving the wage increases, like 24% is a significant wage increase, right? That is very big, you know. But it goes to show you that unionization becomes like one of these things that needs to be looked at as an option from employee groups to get the proper level of compensation that they need to address the cost of living in our countries that is out of control, you know, and our complete inability to be able to afford housing as well. But you know, anyway, so unionization, certainly it's not the only answer, but I think especially if you look at the U.S. context, then it becomes a big part of the answer, because you're probably not in a regulatory environment that particularly cares about the worker so much, and so the worker needs to take it into their own hands. The workers need to take it into their own hands and band together in a sense. So that's it. That's it for the show. As always, thank you so much for watching and listening, whether live or on the recordings. You know, we'll be back again next week to probably talk a little bit about Tunic, I guess, if I finish it. And also to talk about the news. You know, until next time, take care of yourselves and be well. No, take care of yourselves, be good to yourselves, and we'll see you again. Thanks. Bye.